Hi everyone. So today this video you will learn how we can automate our deployment activities. So one example in UI we are doing this carbon app application deployment through manually, right? And we are manually also deleting here. So this requirement asking by one of my subscriber. So this video service admin full flow. So he is asking to make a video to deploy the services automatically, not manually, to stop and start and to delete or on deployment. So this kind of multiple type of activity he is expecting through automatic. So this video you will learn how we can do this activity. So it's one long video, so kindly make patience to watch this one, and it will give you 100% guarantee to learn multiple new things, and you will use this one is your corporate and your major project as well. So let's start how to do that one. First of all, let me go through integration studio. So the studio which you are using regularly, right? So this one, let me create one REST API here. So the way we are creating every time, right? The same approach, you need to create one sample REST API. So here little bit complex, as I mentioned before, day by day we need to prepare and we need to build our complex API. So it will cover all kind of scenarios, so you will not face any problem in future. So let's start how to do that one. So here I'm giving one name. So either you can give any name. So I'm giving one API control. So you can give any name, that doesn't matter, you want to use this name or different name, that doesn't matter, depends on you. Now I'm adding context. So I'm just explaining this video step by step process. If video is lengthy also, you will learn overall everything, not only a simple bit I am just missing here. You will learn everything. So let's go through step by step process. -control, because this video you need to use in your automated activity. No need to go through UI portal and deploy that one. So you will use that one as the deployment, on deployment, this kind of thing you can do by yourself through API. Not related, you need to go to UI portal and do that one. So let's start. So version type I'm adding here context. So context I'm adding here 1.0.0. So this is our initial version. So I'm giving here 1.0. Let me finish this one. So as we saw our previous videos, while we are building any API, so this is our default view we can see in here. So here what we need to do, so as per our activity we need to use two kind of operation. So one is for just example, one we need to do for enable. If we call enable, I'm just adding two context means one URL template. So if I call enable, then it will enable our service, means we can use that service, or customer can use that service in their real-time activity. So the point number 2, if I call disable endpoints, so it will do what, just example, you are the admin and the customer you want to expose. So if you are admin, so if you click that enable option, means then only that customer can able to interact, they can able to access. If you enable if you use the disable API, then it will read, means undeployed your API, then that particular customer can't able to do that one. So now your question is how we will provide that authentication. So we have one more application is there, that is called WSO2 API Manager. So this way we can give expose our API to particular customer. So this one we are basically using for expose API to internet. So so we'll use this portal next video, how we can expose our enable and disable API through API Manager portal. So we can give a particular access. So we can give particular access to a specific customer. Okay. So this one we will see using our access token. So this one basically using for in the next part, using access token, customer can able to generate our token, and they can able to use enable API and disable API. That is next step. And this video I'll just overall I'll tell you what we need to do for this, splitted with the two parts. Then they will do what? So we will give subscription. will give a subscription to customer. So customer can able to access enable disable API depends on their subscription. So let's start how to do first our activity. Like let me go through integration studio. So here like we need to create like one resource. So in here what we need to do, I need to add one post method. So here like let me go through resource and change this one. So as we are doing like as a payload request body, right? So first of all we need to go through request. So here this property view, I'm just changing this one to post. So this post method, it will do what? Like while we are sending the request, so post method body, it will hit to our backend and we'll get response. So this is the plan like we need to do here. So this resource like I'm adding here one in sequences. This is the in sequence. So we need to add one property mediator. Let me drag and drop here one property. So this property, I'll tell you like let me add one more property here. So these two properties. So one property, first property we are using for what? We are using for API name. Then the second property we'll use for action. So this action means is it deployed or destroyed, that kind of thing we need to check that one. So let's go through our studio. So this first property, let me right click and go through show property. So here I'm giving one name. I'm adding here API name. So this is my name I'm adding here. So you can give any name, that doesn't matter. So we need to use one expression. Let me click this one. So here I'm using so JSON-eval. JSON-eval. So inside this one I'm adding just example like if I go through notepad. So here what I'm trying to achieve here, this is one JSON like one type of JSON. So inside this JSON I'm trying to do what? API name. So if I call API name and this is I'm adding colon, here I'm adding one name like hello. So just example one API we created with the hello XML file and we assign that one like we are sending a request with hello. So if this request is going to this resource, right, then it will pick that XML and it will delete that one. So this is like one scenario like I'm telling you. So let's go through the real-time experience. So you will learn that one. So I'm adding your dollar dot API name. So this dollar dot API name, right? So it will whatever value we are sending through request body, this API name, right? So it will fetch that one and it will send a request to backend to verify is there any XML file is there with this hello.xml or not. What I mean here, hello.xml. I just created one file. This file as a car file I built and I deployed in the Carbon application. So if I call this one as a hello, and that time if it is calling like our endpoint means if it is if I am calling enable or disable depends on our my request. This XML file will delete from the destination or remove or again this come back to our destination. That is the plan. So let's start how to do that one. Let me go through integration studio. Let's go through step-by-step process. If the video is lengthy also, at least you have to learn everything step-by-step process. So let's start how to do that one. So this is done like one XML expression I added here. Let me close this one. This one I added for API name. So one more property also I'm using here. Let me go through so property view. So here I'm adding action. So this action I am not using any expression because the value, the API name only I am fetching from the request as per the requirement by the subscriber, right? So they are expecting if you see here how to enable service handle stop and deployed cell automatically hit the URL from the client side. So as per the requirement, client only need to pass the API name, means client means depends on the customer. If they call this API, if it is enabled or disabled depends on their passing the URL. So it will call and it will do their activity. So that's why I added here like one for API name. Let me go through integration studio. So here like action what we need to pass. So action, let me hard code here. So I'm adding here disable. So one condition for disable I'm using here. So because this keyword value is default, so we need not pass it. If it is enable, we need to use one more property and we can use their enable. So if it is disable, because this endpoints I'm going to use for disable only, so the next resource also I need to use for enable. So there is two resource, like this kind of resource, right? So we need to create two things. So now our first property ready, second property also ready. So next we need to do what? Let me so we as per our current development, so we need to use Java. So Java, like what need to do, I'll tell you. Like first of all, our endpoint, first endpoint, it will call what? It will call first property mediator. So property mediator, so as I mentioned, like we need to use Java, so it will call Java class. So it will call Java class. So after Java class, we need to use one payload mediator. Okay, so it will call one payload mediator. So this payload mediator, so it will, after that, like we need to get some response, right? So we need to use response mediator. So this video you will learn this thing, like while you are calling your endpoint, it will hit for first our like code like property mediator. After property mediator, it will call our Java class. So then Java class, whatever response we are getting from the backend, we will print that one as a property mediator. Then we will respond back to the customer. So this is the flow like we need to use for this API. Let's go through step by step approach. Okay, let me go through integration studio again. So here there is one minute, let me scroll up. There is one class file is here, so let me drag and drop here. So this class we need to, if you go through show property view, right? So here it is asking one class name. So we will create one Java file, and that class name we will call it here. So that we will go learn like step by step process. Just leave this class mediator here only. So after that, as I mentioned, we need to whatever response we are getting from the Java, so that one we will iterate and we will print it in payload mediator. So let's start how to do that one. Now we need to use payload mediator, right? Let me add payload mediator here. So inside payload mediator, if I go through show property view, so we need to print the response as a JSON. So first of all, understand step by step. Media type just change to JSON, because this JSON format response only we want to print it as a postman. Okay, so here in inline, so this inline I'm adding two parameters. So one is for API name. So this API name will print our API name. Like just example, like if you go to Notepad, this is our request body. So this request body, while we send to our endpoints, if it is enable endpoints or disable endpoints, depends on that particular endpoint. Every endpoint, the two endpoint, we need to use this same payload only. So this same payload, as I mentioned, like we need to get two response. Like one, we need to know what is the particular API we used and that status of that API. So here let me add here $1. This is for like API name. So the second one I need to use for what? Second one we need to use for status. So let me add here status. So this status, we need to know that particular API is already running or deployed or undeployed. The status we need to visible here. So this is the two payload request, means payload request I added here. So just example, like what is the value of $1 and what is the value of $2. So this one we need to get it from our Java, like the value response, the Java class is I am going to create, right? So from that Java class I just fetch the value, and that value I need to pass in payload mediator. So like I'm giving my name here. So let me add one argument. So this argument let me change to expression. So this expression, let me just minimize the screen. So maybe it's visible to my subscriber like easily. So let me minimize this one. Yeah. So this expression I'm adding get hyphen property. So inside get hyphen property, I need to call what? I need to call API name. So this keyword must be matched with our Java like defined variable. So then only that response whatever we are getting from the backend, that backend response we will capture and we will pass it here. So let me save this one. This is like one for get name, means API name, and as per our subscriber request also we need to pass the status, is it deployed or running, means undeployed, or it is already deployed or already means not deployed. So that status we can visible here. So this one is for like status. So for API status, let me change to expression here. So same condition, same syntax we need to add here, get property. So inside get property I need to call API status. So let me save this one, let me finish this one. Yeah, so close this property. If I go through this source view, right, so here you can see I added one JSON eval, that is for like fetching the value from the request body, and the action already I had coded here, because if it is already, so we need to use like the endpoints. So for that particular endpoints we need to use for what, we need to use for disable. So here like we are passing the API name and the status value. So now this whatever value we are getting from the backend, that we are easily like passing here. So let me go through design view. One thing we need to do here, so as I mentioned, we need to use two parameter, right, one for enable and one for disable. So let me go through integration studio. So this resource, let me right click and show property view. So here what we need to do, there is one URI style is there, right, let me drop down this one and change this one to URI, URI mapping. So this URI mapping we need to use for what, disable. So this one like we are using for like disable API. Let me go through source view. So what I mean here, like this particular resource we are going to use for disable API, and we will create one more API, like what I mean here, like we need to use for enable service also, right. So we will use for one service for enable. So how we can do here, so that at the top you can see right side API, right, if you click this one, there is an API resources there. Let me drag and drop here. So the previous API we will use for disable, so this API we will use for enable. Let me show property view. So here let me change this one to URI mapping. So here I am giving like enable. So this particular API we need to use for, and choose your post. Okay, make sure you are using post. Let me close this one. Let me check the above resource also, just for verification. So we used post or get, so this is also post. So now as whatever I did for above, right, for disable API, the same like two property mediator, class mediator, payload mediator we need to use. Yeah, so after getting, as I mentioned in the scenario, like after getting the response from the backend, means from payload mediator, we need to respond back to the customer, right. So same thing we need to use here. Let me go through integration studio. So after getting the response from the backend, what we need to do, let me add the response mediator. So this response mediator, whatever response we are getting from the payload, it is again respond back to the customer. So the same thing we need to use for enable API. So let me add one property mediator, that is for API name, and the second property mediator I added here, that is for like particular action, is it enable or disable. Let me complete this two property, like let's go through step by step approach. So here I am adding API name. So let me click here like the expression. So this expression we need to use JSON -eval. So inside JSON -eval I am adding your $.API name. So this $API name, let me save this one. So as I mentioned, like one property we will use for API and one property we will use for particular action. So here I am adding action. So this action I just hard coding one value, enable. Hope you like at least you something, at least you are getting it. So let me go through source view. So this resource we are using for disable API, and this resource we will use for enable our API. Means one, if we call disable endpoints, it will undeploy, like it will destroy our API, so no one can able to access. So if you will call enable API, then again the rollback, so it will take the files from different folder and it will store in the existing folder, so customer can use that one. So let me go through design view. So this design view, like the above one is disabled, so the below one, like as I mentioned, like the same condition we need to use here. So let me drag and drop here. So this is one class mediator we used here for accessing the data from the backend, and we will pass as a payload mediator. So as per our condition, we need to get the data from Java class, and from Java class we need to pass as a payload mediator. If I go through here, let me go through payload. So this payload factory, let me drag and drop here. So inside this payload we need to pass API name and the status, whatever status as it is enable or disable, that kind of status we need to pass, or whatever response we are getting from the backend, we will pass that one. So the media type, let me change to JSON here. So here let me add one JSON, like whatever we added API name. So just understand, so maybe it will take some time to get the flow, but at least you will learn every step-by-step process in this video. So status, so this status I'm adding a $2. So 1 minute, so it's required within the string. Okay, that's fine. Now this is our payload request, so we need to pass the argument. So first, as we did like for disable API, right? Let me change to expression. So here let's change this one to expression. So this expression we are getting the value from the backend. Backend means from Java class. So get hyphen property. So within this get hyphen property, so we are calling that API name. So let me finish this one. This one is for API name, and the second one, let me go through expression. So this expression, let me change this one to expression here. So get hyphen property. Okay, so inside get hyphen property, as we did like for API name, so we need to use for API status, right? So we need to print both. We need to print API name as well as we need to print API status. So let me save this file. Now we are just assume that we got the response from the Java, and we need to respond back to the customer, right? So for that purpose, let me adding respond mediator. So let me go through source code. Now we haven't done the class, okay, because we need to create the class and we need to build our Java source code, then only we need to call that particular class in here, right? So we'll go through step by step. Now our basic, like the overall flow is ready. Let me go through source view. So if you see here, right, so we used, let me explain you the overall thing. So this resource we are using for disable API, and this resource we will use for enable API, like to deploy or undeployed. You can assume like what kind of keyword you want to use. So then we created two expression. One expression for for getting the response, means getting the name from the request payload. Request payload means we are sending one request, right? API name hello. This hello value we are getting from this particular syntax. So JSON-eval, then $, like the dollar indicates like the full the JSON. From there we are iterating the value, extracting the API name and printing here. Then the action we are printing as a disable. Then we are passing like as a payload. So this payload value we are getting from this class. So this class we just need to develop like one Java class. From that Java class we will fetch the API name, we will fetch the status of that particular API, and we will pass these two particular. So get property means is fetching the value from the API name, and it's fetching the value from the API status. So let's start how to build that one. So same we did for enable API. Hope those who cover disable, they can easily understand. The code is same only the difference here is /enable here. Here the difference is /disable. So now our overall source code for the full flow ready, but now we need to do what? We need to create our Java. The first resource we used for disable means we'll undeploy the API. The second resource we used for enable, we'll again deploy the API in the API folder. So let's start how we can create that one. So instead of until we need to complete this class mediator, right? So this class mediator, as we already discussed, let me go through property view. So here we need to add the package and that class name. So first of all, if you go through the source code, right? So this source code is doing what? So this payload mediator argument, this is like the API name and the API status for this disable API, disable endpoints. So here like the value we are getting from this class mediator. So and the request we are getting from this $.API name. This is for the request payload, and the status already there in the the hard-coded value here. So these two status, it will decide if the API is deployed or undeployed. Depends on that we need to check this condition. So as I mentioned only one class is pending here. So let me go through browser. I already created a repo for this video only. Let me show you. So those who are already watching my video, they already know my repo details. And those who are watching my video newly, kindly go through my channel. So this is so beyond doubt. So probably basically I'm using all the technical type of videos and innovative things. So kindly subscribe my channel so you will get future notification in your device. So this is my repo. Let me go through repository. So this repository, I created one repository here, dynamic deployment of EI. So open that one. So already I upload 3 files, one for XML file. This is my own main XML file, and this mediator we need to use for to call our class, and this POM XML used for, there is one Maven dependency is there, so we need to add that one in dependency XML file, means POM XML file. So let's start how to do that one. Let me open this APIControlMediator jar file. So on high level, let me explain you this one. So first of all, this is my package. While creating any Maven project, it is asking you one package, right? So this is that one, and this 3 is the additional extra library which is required to complete this process. So for this installing this additional means this first 2, right? The line number 3 and line number 4. It is org.apache synapse module. So for importing this one in the project, if you open this POM XML file, right? So there is one dependency here. So this dependency we need to add in our POM XML file. I'll go through step by step process. Let me go through Java file again. So if you here you can see this is my Java class name. So it extended to this particular abstract mediator. So this mediator will do what? We created one method here, mediate method. Inside that we are calling the second package message context. So this message context, I am passing one additional attribute here, context. So this context is nothing but, let me go through API XML file. So if I open the source view, right? So here you can see the version type is context here. So inside this context /API control, I added 2 resources, one for this disable and one for I added here enable. So this disable, while you are calling, it will check the API name and it will check the action name. So these 2 value it is fetching from here. So if you go through source code, right? So there is if you are calling disable, so it will check first the disable context, and from the context it will verify what is the API name. This API name it will fetch from this request body. So this is the request body name, right? API name, it will take it from here. And the second one is action. So this action value it will take it from here. Okay, so one for API name and one for action name. So after taking this one, it will decide is it API already deployed or undeployed. So that thing you will check here. Now if you see, I added one string here, one for API path and one for disabled path. So this API path it will check what? It is go through repository deployment server. So let me show you. So this is so if you see here this action and this API name, so it is calling from here, means this 2 parameter, and the third variable it is showing what? The carbon application home path. So this home path, one for API path where we need to deploy the actual API file, and this is the disabled path, means this is one logic is implemented here. So how like I manage here, I created two folder, one folder for actual API folder. So let me show you, let me go through this path. So here this is like actual home path. So inside this home path, go through repository, deployments, server. So inside server there is one synapse config folder is there, open that one, then default. So inside this default I need to create one folder, so that is API folder. Okay, so let me click new one folder. So let me add API. So this API folder I need to do what, I need to add all the like new API. So this API folder by default automatic it will deploy, and we can see that API in UI as well. So let me log in this one. So here you can see the list of API, right? So here also after deploying the new API in this folder, so what I mean here, like let me go through EI, go through repository, deployment, server, synapse config. So this default folder, if I deploy any like new XML file in this API folder, so this file data automatic it will trigger, and we can see that API in UI as well. Okay, so the second what I did here, like I added one more folder, that is for API disabled. So this folder, let me add it here. Let me go through default, and let me create one more new folder, default. So the disabled. So this API disabled, if I call that, what I mean here, like let me show you. If I call this disable API, it will do what? So if I call this disable endpoint, it will go through this API folder. So what I mean here, me go through this default. Yeah, so it will go through this API folder, and whatever XML file is available inside this API folder, right? So it will take that XML file and it will deploy in API disabled folder. So that means whatever file is available in actual API folder, it will take and it will deploy here. So it will by default it will undeploy your XML file, so you will not execute that actual API. So this is the logic like I added here. In the third condition, like what I added here, like the file. So I created one file, API file. This is one object I created here, and the second object is disabled file. So disabled file, I stored the disabled file path, and the API file I stored the actual API path. Okay, now I created one more variable like string, then status. So this status we will check. I added one try block here, and the below I added one catch block. So inside try block I added three conditions, one for if condition, one for else condition, and one for else if condition, one for else condition. So the first condition is telling what, if I am passing like the endpoint is disabled, then it will do what, it will first check the file is available in API file or not. This API file is what, this API file is the actual API file which is available in API folder. If it is exist, it will do what, it will rename to disabled file. So this disabled file path is what, API-disabled. It will take the file from here, it will store here, and it will print the status disabled. So that means if I go through this actual folder, so if you are, just example, if you are deploying any file in API folder, and if I execute the query, it will take the file from API folder and it will store here. That is the scenario we will do here. So this is for if condition. If the file already deployed in the API disabled folder, if you are executing the same, calling the same endpoint, then we will get the status already disabled. And if you are passing any wrong API name, then you will get not found. Same for enable, like if the file is there in the disabled file, so it will first check that file is exist in the disable file folder or not. Disable file means it's a object. Inside the object we are calling this particular folder. So this folder, if the file is there, it will take the file, means it will take the file from API disable folder, then it will add in API folder. So it will deploy the XML file in it will deploy the XML file, so we can see that XML file data in UI as well. The same for like else if condition, like if the file already exists, then it will print already exist, already enabled. If you are passing any wrong API name, then it will print not found. If above two condition, if condition and else if condition is not satisfied, then it will print unknown action. Now context set property, so this will do what? If the status, so this status is starting from here, so this status and this is disabled and not found, or already disabled, already enabled, so that status we are setting here. So after that, if the name also we are setting here, so one for actual API status, one for actual API name. So then after setting, from where we are fetching the value, if you go through EI source code, right, if you scroll down, so this is for disable endpoint and this is for enable endpoint. So in there we are passing two arguments, right, in payload mediator, one for get property mediator for API name, one get property for API status. So same for enable endpoint also. What is happening, like whatever data it is setting by the code from Java, so we can see the data in our actual API, means actual XML file. So one for status, one for API name. Now if try block is failed above condition, it is setting the property, means the API name, with the error message. So this is the code like we already added in the Git. So let me quickly show you like how you can do this thing. So first of all, let me copy this class name, open Eclipse. We'll create one sample like from the scratch, like we'll create one Maven project, and there like we'll create the jar file, and that particular jar file will deploy in EI and we'll run the flow. We'll go to the full flex project, not like simply skipping any part. Here I just added here I just need to add this package here. So this name I need to add in artifact. So let me copy this package name, let me go through EI and add it here. So here we need to modify the version, so I'm giving 1.0.0, you can give anything, and the package is jar file only. Let me finish this one. So it will take some second to build your Maven folder structure. So now you can see our Maven like sample folder structure has been created. Let me go through src, main and test. So either you need to create main or test, it depends on you. So let me create like Java. So right click and go through new and click others. So here Java is there, right? So sorry, class is there, click class, next. So here I'm just giving one name here. 1 minute. Let me go through repo. First copy the package. Let me add the package in package field, and the name, let me copy this name. So here I'm adding the package name. Okay, let me finish this one. So this APIControlMediator file has been created here. So let me go through UI, let me copy this code in Eclipse, let me replace this one. After save this file, it is throwing what? It is throwing this to org Apache Synapse message context or mediator, abstract mediator. It is showing cannot be resolved. So for resolving this issue, I already created one POM XML file here, right? So this POM XML file you need to add, you need to copy this dependency, go through Eclipse and POM XML file. So while we are creating any sample Maven project, the default POM XML file is like this way. Give one enter and add this dependency. So use Ctrl Shift F, so it will indent your code. Now let me save this one. After save this one, immediately if you see this bottom of the screen, right, it's building that one. Now it's done. So now you can see after adding this dependency in POM XML file, the error has been resolved. So let's start to create one jar file and quickly do the testing. So first we need to do what? Before that also we have some steps need to complete here. So here you need to go to Maven. So Maven, there is one option is here, update project. Click that one and select the actual folder which you want to update the Maven. Let me click OK. So here it is showing what updating Maven project. So it's done. Make sure there is no dependency issue while you are creating the jar file. Okay. Go through run as. There is one more option is there. Maven clean. Okay. Let me clean the Maven here. So it will check do you have any issue in your Java file, or so it will clearly clean all the garbage collector. Now it is showing what building succeed. If I right click this one again, go through run as, there is one more option is there, Maven test. Let's test the Maven, is there any issue with your jar file or any issue with your Java file. So it will clear that one. So here you could see it is showing what building success. Now go to your actual folder. There is an export option is there, right? Click export, select jar file, click next. Here uncheck and select again, click next, again next, then finish this one. So now it is already been created in your desktop. Let me go through desktop. So here you can see one jar file has been created here. So it's a 6.90 KB, that's fine. Let me copy this file and go through our EI. So first of all, in EI, there is an lib directory is there. Okay, let's deploy here. So then after adding this library file in the lib folder, right, let me go through here and we need to restart this EI again. So those who want to skip, kindly skip this part also. So now you can see this product has been started here. So let's go through the folder again. Let me show you one thing. So here just now we deployed in API controller in li folder, right? If you go through drop-ins directory, so the same file has been created here, but there is only minor changes there, underscore 1.0.0. So if in case if you are deploying any jar file in your library folder, so while it's deploying, it's automatic, it will deploy in drop-ins. So it's automatic deploy with underscore your extension it will create. So that's fine, this step already done. After deploy this jar file, we need to invoke this jar file in our XML file. Let's go through integration studio. Let me go through design view. So here what we need to do, this class mediator, right, just right click that one, go through show property view. So this show property view, there is one class name is there, right? So here let me go through this .java file. So first we need to do what? We need to copy this package we need to call that Java class name. Let me copy this APIControlMediator. So let me add it here, remove the space. The same name, let's copy this one. So we need to add in second resource, right, or enable. Let me right click this one, go to show property view, we replace this one, save this one. So after adding this one, this is our final XML file and our Java code is ready. Now one thing is pending here. For testing purpose, we need one sample XML file to show you if you are using enable endpoint, then the file is moving to, means if you are using enable endpoint, actually the file is moving from API folder to this folder or not, and from this folder to API folder or not. Let's start how to do that one. So as we know, we already have how to create our REST API. So let me quickly create one sample REST API. So that API we will use for testing activity. So here I'm giving quickly, let me give test demo 1. So you can give anything, class demo. Let me finish this one. So this is the default design view. Let me quickly add one payload mediator. So let me add one payload mediator here. After payload we need to respond, right? So let me add one respond mediator. So in payload mediator, just add one sample. Let me add one sample only JSON. Let me modify here place. So I'm adding here Puri, and here I'm printing as a JSON response, right? So we need to modify media type as a JSON. So let me save this file. So what I need to do, so if you see here, right, so this is our UI. Let me refresh this one. So let me quickly log in this portal. So after login, you can see here, so the file which we created here, I'm not deploying. So I will not use this portal to deploy the XML file, or I will not create any car file to deploy here. So what I need to do, let me go through Integration Studio. This Integration Studio, let me select this test demo and select this API control, right click, go through. Okay, so you can go through step one by one. Then right click, go through show in, let me go through System Explorer. So this System Explorer, let me select this one and test demo, copy these two file. If I go through the API folder, right, so let me go through our custom API folder. So usually as per WSO2 reference, they also suggesting like need to create this API folder in default. So it will sync that API XML file to here as well. Means if you are here, it will by default it will deploy in UI also. If I deploy these two file here, if I go through log, right, let's wait for a few seconds. So you can see, right, so in log also it is printing what API. So you can see here in log also it is showing what API has been deployed. So if you see here, right, so it's showing what API has been deployed. This is for API control API, and this is for test demo API also has been deployed here. So that means like if you are deploying any XML file in this custom folder also, it will sync to the actual UI. So let me refresh this one. So here you can see, right, you can able to see the API control and test demo. So that means like hope like if you try to hit the API, I'll tell you like, so just now we create a test demo, right. Let me copy this one. This is one sample API. Me open Postman. So let me copy this URL, open Postman. So here I'm adding that URL. So this is a get API, so nothing need to change any method. If I send request, I go through Integration Studio, test demo, click source view, right. So added here what place Puri. So if you go through Postman, you can see here, right, place Puri. So that means we haven't deployed any UI, or we haven't created any car file to deploy, but we deployed in only inside this API folder and we tried the flow. So now hope you guys are understand like how we can accessing like deploying this process through direct API folder as well. So now actual thing like we need to do what, let me change this one to post and go through UI. Here I'm just copy this endpoint of this API controller. Okay, so this is the aim of this video today. So this is my base URL. After that I want to disable. If I want to disable this API, let me go through body. Without body, if I send request, it is showing what null and not found. That means we haven't added any request body. If I try to go through raw data and change this one to JSON, I'll show you step by step all scenario. So here I'm adding what API name. So in API name, if I'm passing like any random value A, B, C, D or anything ABV, if I send request, it is showing what not found. That means ABV is not available inside API folder. So now let me show you. Let me copy this file. So before that, let me show you there is no file available in API displayed. So let me go through Postman. If I change this one to, if I change this API name to actual API, and if I send request, it is showing what test demo disabled. If I go through our actual folder, so now you can see, right, one file has been added here. And now if I go through log, if I hit enter, right, it is showing what API name test demo has been on deployed. And now for testing purpose, let me go through previous tab. If I send request again, right, so here you can see like what is the error you are getting. Just wait for few seconds. Let me go through log and hit enter. Maybe it's reflecting quickly. Yeah. So if you now go through Postman and try, it's showing what 404 not found. Again, if I hit the same request again, it is showing what already disabled. So now I need to do what? Let me change to enable. If I send request, it is showing what test demo enabled. Now if I go through the actual API disabled folder, now the file has been moved from this folder to API folder. Now if I go through log and hit enter, it is showing what? API name test1 has been deployed to this API folder. That means actually it is working. So now if I go through postman, if I try hit again the same API, I'm getting response, right? So if I go through the same API controller API and send request again, it is showing what? Already enabled. That means our 5 to 6 scenario it working fine as per our code. So I hope everyone understanding what I'm trying to do here. I hope those who are watching my channel, that is well and good. Those who are newly watching my video, kindly go through my channel, so beyond doubt, like, share and subscribe my channel so you will get more videos in upcoming days. Thank you so much.